This is a relay project.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jesperson.
Well, Real Talkers, it's been one of those kind of weeks, where it starts in one direction. I don't know about your experience, but this has certainly been ours. Your focus is one place, you have one plan, and then everything just gets turned around. Everything gets turned upside down. And that is certainly the case, I think, for millions of Canadians that were going about their sort of regular weekly routine right up until news broke out of Tumbler Ridge, BC, that just shocked the nation, obviously, and brought everybody to a point where we're holding our kids close, we're checking in with our family members, and we're having difficult conversations that we definitely didn't plan on having just a couple of days ago, certainly a week ago. I mean, that's why we tapped Dr. Jody Carrington on the shoulder in our most recent episode and asked if she could join us to talk out how to converse with your kids about tragedy, how to process devastating events like what happened in this quiet northeastern BC mining town. 8 people murdered, and obviously a scenario that has broken the hearts of everybody, young and old. It's put teachers in a particular headspace. It's put first responders certainly in a position that they're all too familiar with, right? Grappling with some of the horrific assignments that police officers and EMT and that firefighters encounter on a day-to-day basis. We've also got an email, by the way, that we'll read in just a little bit from April, who makes an incredible point about a group of professionals that are rarely mentioned, that were not mentioned in our breaking coverage of this story, this tragedy in Tumbler Ridge. And April makes an incredible point. I let her know as much as soon as she emailed us. I said, I'm going to read this on the show when we welcome Charles Adler. Here's my point in saying all this, is that that Chuck, the award-winning legendary broadcaster, that talk show host that, gleaned all these awards through the course of his decades-long career and now serving his country in the Senate. Chuck and I text all the time. We're pals. We're buddies. He served as a mentor to me through my career, and we had a plan about a week ago, just under a week ago, after that Super Bowl halftime show, to bring Charles on. He had some insights into the Bad Bunny halftime show and what it said about the state of the world, and then the contrasting story of that Gordie Howe bridge between Windsor and Detroit that the president said that he was going to shut down until the Americans had more of an ownership stake in it. And then Tumbler Ridge happened. And if you know Charles, you know that he's not one to shy away from talking about matters of the heart. His brand was Canadian common sense for so many years. And so we didn't change our plan to bring him on, because why would we? If you're like me, when you're talking about the toughest stuff, we're not trying to solve anything or figure anything out, because it doesn't really make sense. But there's a lot to talk about with this. If you're like me, you go to your closest friends. You go to the people whose perspectives you trust. And that's what we're going to do in this episode. This show is happening with the presenting sponsorship at RapidX Financial. Our friends at RapidX Financial, online at rapidxfinancial.com. The world of crypto moves fast, very fast right now in particular. And your trust in an exchange can't be a gamble. And that's why we're proud to partner with this made-in-Alberta solution that's backed by the same experts behind those Rapid Cash ATMs that you've seen across Canada for 25 years. You've probably used them a whole bunch. Maybe didn't notice the logo on the side of the ATM. But Rapid Cash has been around for more than a quarter century, and now RapidX makes it easy for you to get started with Bitcoin with 3 ways to trade. They've got the crypto ATMs. They look similar to the cash ones. They've got their over-the-counter desk if you need advice, you want a human to guide you through it, or if you're making a discrete, larger value trade. And then, of course, they have the secure online platform as well. You can find that at rapidxfinancial.com. You can link to it in the show notes on YouTube or on the podcast. A special offer for Real Talkers, because you're hearing about this on the show. If you go to the website and use the promo code Ryan50, all one word, Ryan50, they're going to take 50% off fees on all of your online Interac e-transfer trades. RapidX is secure, it's FinTrack registered, and critically, it's non-custodial, meaning you always control your keys. That's promo code 50, Ryan50, Ryan50 at rapidxfinancial.com. As we welcome in our feature interview presented by Mercedes-Benz Edmonton West, back to the program, a very good friend of the show, Senator Charles Adler. Chuck, sharing with the audience that you and I were planning on talking for quite some time, almost a week, which is an eternity when you're producing talk shows. And of course, I didn't even have to ask you after the tragedy unfolded in Tumbler Ridge whether you were still up for it. We're grateful to have you here with us today.
Thanks a lot, Ryan. It feels like it. I don't know about you, but it still feels to me like it just happened a few minutes ago.
Yeah, we're looking at Johnny's been doing a good job keeping an eye on the amazing journalism that's happening out there right now, and we can talk about that too. That's a tough assignment to be out there as a journalist, as a reporter, with the mandate that you have, the assignment that you have, and the sensitivities that come with it. Obviously, the respect, the empathy. Just the power of the emotions that people are feeling out there. But I see these images of, bouquets of flowers and little stuffed animals stacked up outside this school. And it's just, I think that I'm experiencing what millions of parents are experiencing. And that's I'm squeezing my own kids and trying to figure out, if or how to talk to them. We had that conversation with Dr. Jody Carrington, but just a huge punch in the gut.
Stories come along, political stories, and that's what we discuss much of the time. The 51st state nonsense and all of the various attacks. You mentioned the bridge a few moments ago. We put all the capital up. Canada puts up all the capital for bridge, and then Donald Trump says we're ripping them off, even though we used American steel and American labor and all the rest. Anyway, it's just such crap. But, some of that is positive in the sense that it reminds you of how much you love your country. And when it comes to the country, yes, of course, we love the mountains and we love the ocean. We love the trees. We love all of that. But let's just be honest about this. It's Canadians we love, Canadians. And when Tumbler Ridge happens, it doesn't matter, you identified it as northeastern BC. I mean, the journalist in you're going to pinpoint, where it was because it's part of the whole W5, who, what, where, and when.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter that it's northeastern BC. It doesn't matter how large the country is technically. When something like this happens, the entire country is a village. And these are our neighbors. It doesn't matter whether they're 100 miles away or 3,000 miles away. They're in our village. They're in our neighborhood. They're our kids. They're Canada's children. Sorry. I promised myself I wouldn't do that. Anyway, they're our kids. And it's really difficult. And it really blows all the political crap that we generally talk about away. I'm not saying the political stuff isn't important, but nothing is as important as our children. In the United States for the last little while, and of course, Canada has participated as well. You've got the 84-year-old woman who's the mother of the famous talk show host, and, she's missing. Nancy is missing, and it's horrible. All of us are rooting for Nancy to come back. But why is it that we're rooting for Nancy? Why are we so glued to that story? It's because all of us think about our own mothers. What if that happened to my mom? And we're thinking, of course, now about our own children. And the what if gets blown away because it isn't what if it could happen. It is happening to our children. And so one can try to rationalize this a thousand ways from Sunday. The journalist way of doing it is, well, you find out who did it and what their issues were. And you find out about whether guns were used, and you find out, how many guns the person may have had, and whether or not they've ever been checked out. And you can ask questions about, why did this person? Anyway, you can do all of that, and some people are doing that, and they're paid to do that. We're not doing that this morning so much on this show or whenever it is that people are listening to this, because our job is to talk about what really matters to Canadians. And what really matters to Canadians is our kids are gone. They've been ripped off in the most monumental way. And when you see the pictures, and when you see the video, and when you see the parents, no parent should ever go through this. It's almost a cliche to say that, some parents belong to one of the smallest clubs in the world, and it's the club that nobody wants to belong to. It's the parent that has to bury their own child. And that's what you've got right now in northeastern British Columbia. That's what you have right now in Canada. And as far as I think most Canadians are concerned, because I do believe most Canadians have a heart and a soul, and it's like we've got to bury our own children right now. And we ask ourselves the question that I think everybody asks, whether they're very spiritual or religious or not. How can life be this unfair? What the heck did we do to deserve this? And we can go on and on about the answer to that question. Many people have different answers, and I don't have a good one for you. I don't know what on earth this country, this village has done to deserve this.
Yeah. I just want to say, I feel compelled to say their names. I want to say their names. Abel Wansa was 12 years old. Kylie Smith, 12 years old. Takaria Lampert, 12 years old. Ezekiel Schofield, 13 years old. Zoe Benoit, 12 years old. The shooter's sibling, young Emmett Jacobs, 11 years old, murdered in his home, along with his mom, Jennifer Jacobs, 39 years old, murdered in her home as well. There's no way to make sense of this, and as oftentimes happens in a mass shooting or any tragedy like this, we talked to Shachi Curl in our most recent episode from Angus Reid. She was on. It was a similar situation to you, Chuck. She was booked to come on to talk about their polling around Alberta separation, and she reached out to me ahead of time. I like to give people credit here, sort of give the behind the scenes story just to give the audience an idea. So Shachi reaches out and she says, "Hey, based on Tumbler Ridge, do you still want me to come on? Are we still going to talk about it?" And I said the same thing I said to Raheem Mohammed from the National Post the day before. I said, if you're willing to join me as Canadians are coming together and joining together in conversation and basically in sort of like pouring out our hearts to each other and just trying to put into words what we're feeling, then I'd love to still have you on. Because, this show's a little bit different, like you alluded to. We don't have the boots on the ground, the journalists on assignment that are waiting there, outside the RCMP detachment or trying to talk to the families. We're not doing these live hits and checking in. This is more of a long form show where people come together and talk. Our live chat, gathers in community. I put it that way on purpose. Every weekday morning at 8:30 Mountain, 10:30 Eastern, and they get to know each other and they talk it out, and people communicate through emails to the show and things like that. And I thought it was important to do so. And I think what Raheem and Shachi and Dr. Jody Carrington and you and others are proving is that it doesn't really matter what your professional background is or what your expertise is. Everybody feels something like this in a different way. And everybody feels something like this in a manner of great magnitude. It just pins us.
Ryan,
and it leaves us feeling that despair.
Ryan, when I come on with you, and when I'm coming on with you, I'm coming on with all the people who are listening and watching us. I don't think of it as, joining a show and in a studio. I know you've got a studio, and I've got a bit of a studio in the home and some other places. I get that. We're professional communicators, and we've worked out of a lot of different studios. We've got a lot of technology. But what matters to me when I'm talking to Ryan Jesperson is, yes, of course, I'm talking to one of my very, very best friends, someone I really admire. But what matters to me is I trust you. And because I trust you, and that's why you bring out far more in me and everybody that you talk to and everybody who's tuning in. You bring far more out of us than people generally do who are media professionals and slick studios and all the rest of it. So to me, all of us right now aren't in a studio we're not on a show. We're at the kitchen table. And, you and I are Uncle Ryan and Uncle Chuck. I mean, that's who we are. And if we weren't doing that, I honestly don't think that we would have the loyal following that we have. I don't honestly think that people are with us right now because we're media professionals with resumes and Emmy Awards and all that kind of stuff. That's all very, very nice. But we're talking about something much more important than studios and awards right now. We're talking about family. We're talking about the grieving family that is called Canada. And you can't do that unless you can bring people to the kitchen table, or at least make them feel like they're at the kitchen table. And they can say anything they want, and they can share whatever feelings they have. Every one of their feelings is genuine, and nobody's going to argue with their feelings.
I want to specifically recognize and mourn the loss of Shanda Avugana-Duran. She was the education assistant that was with those kids, reportedly in the library. She was also shot and killed, and the BC General Employees Union has issued a statement saying, of course, that they're grieving the profound loss of one of their members taken in this terrible event. They said, we extend our deepest condolences to the family, the friends, the co-workers, and all those lives she touched. We've received several very powerful notes from teachers that are rocked by this for obvious reasons, and in many ways, their I don't want to say workplace behavior, but their protocol, what they do when they arrive at work, has either been impacted by past shootings like this, past tragedies, or by this one, and of course the thought that it could happen in their school as well, and we just took some time to especially recognize teachers in this circumstance, and first responders as well. Two different professions brought together, in this tragedy. And as we're recognizing those professions and sending love to teachers and sending love and support to first responders, I get this email from April to talk@ryanjesperson.com yesterday, just after we talked to Dr. Jody Carrington, the psychologist. A wonderful insight from Dr. Jody on how you should talk to your kids and why you should talk to your kids about tragedy. I really thought that she gave us some valuable tools there. That was on our February 12th episode. So April writes in and says, I really appreciated that episode with Dr. Jody. She says, I apologize if I just missed it. And she didn't miss it. This was an oversight on my part, Chuck, and she says it may have been worth also mentioning the death care professionals that are tasked with caring for these children and families. She says as funeral directors and embalmers, we're often overlooked, deemed non-essential during pandemics when we're risking our personal health to care for the deceased, and during mass tragedies where we are either not considered or even looked at as taking advantage of or financially benefiting from a terrible event. She says, in reality, I've never heard them referred to this before like this, Chuck. I don't know if you have. April says, last responders.
No, I've never.
Yeah, I've never heard that. She says,
Thank you, April. Thank you very much for that.
I agree. She says, last responders see and carry the trauma and grief of families in the immediate aftermath and long after these tragedies take place. She says, our death professionals grieve for every child or victim that comes into our care. She says embalmers spend hours and days meticulously piecing their loved ones back together so that family can hold their hands and say goodbye one last time. She says we reconstruct after trauma, we bathe, we dress, and we care for these, in this case, children, one last time. She says, as a mom, I wash them and I swaddle them as if they were my own. We have a cry, and then we continue on with our jobs. She says death care professionals often don't have debriefings. We often lack access to mental health resources, even though we are experiencing and carrying trauma with us day and night. April says, so a huge hug to death care workers and funeral homes that are caring for these victims and their families. She says it's worth mentioning that many funeral homes, ours included, cover much of the costs of funeral expenses for infants and children. We deeply care. Isn't that incredible?
What's the name of the funeral home?
She doesn't say what the name of the funeral home is, but I'll see if I can find it.
She doesn't want, because she's a great Canadian, she doesn't want publicity. But I want to say to anybody who is in that field, thank you for what you do, and especially to the folks who are in that field. Death care, let's say it again so everyone knows, death care professionals, my God, they are, we talk about people who are dealing with people in vulnerable situations like intensive care nurses and technical people and doctors, of course. But, can you imagine anything more vulnerable than the feelings of a parent who has to look at their loved one in that kind of condition, and you've got these loving death care professionals trying as much as they can to use their talent, their skills, and yes, their love to reconstruct to the extent that they can, to make the most unpleasant situation and most difficult situation in the world just a little bit easier. And Ryan, while we're talking about how so much of this is touching our families, we talk about our kids, but can we talk for a moment about a person who gave you life, your mom, a teacher, a school teacher? How's she doing?
I'm kind of like, it's kind of hitting me right in this moment, to realizing that I didn't yet. I've chatted with my parents this week. I've been in touch with them, but I haven't specifically asked her about it in that context. Maybe that's part of the reason why you're here. I think every teacher, retired, active, or probably even in university, eager to become a teacher. My brother's wife is a teacher. Everybody knows a teacher. That's why teacher strikes are so powerful and emotional. And that's why, everybody knows a teacher, and a teacher has made an impact in every one of our lives, good or bad. Most people can name their favorite teacher. Some people didn't connect as much with their teachers, but
just to get away from the difficulty for a moment, because we owe it to ourselves, no matter how difficult the conversation, to lighten up once in a while, so that we can breathe a little bit. But even when this ugly business of separatism comes up, and I think about the red states and the blue states, and my God, I lived in the United States for a number of years, and I was doing my so-called dog and pony shows every weekend all over America. So I've been to every state. It's like the Hank Snow song, I've been everywhere. So I've been to the red states and the blue states, and the thing that unfortunately is true in most of the so-called red states, the ones that tend to vote for the Republicans, is the public school system. Hate to use this term, but it just sucks in many cases, because they've got less of a tax base, and public schools are all based on property taxes. So when property taxes are relatively low, which they are in the red states, the public school education isn't as good. So when I think about my friends, my neighbors, and of course I've been based in Alberta 3 times, so I still very much think of all Albertans as my neighbors, as I always have. I cannot imagine people voting to be in a situation where they don't have some of the finest public schools in the world, which they have in Alberta. I don't understand how any rational Albertan would give that up. I don't know how much of that is being talked about by people at their kitchen tables right now, but surely to God, when it comes time to putting an X on the ballot, please think about your public schools. Please think about your children, of course, and please think about the teachers that the Alberta school system can afford, that most red states and red state America cannot afford.
Tracy says the teachers I've talked to this week have said that they just have to compartmentalize the situation, because they don't have the mental space to do their difficult jobs all day and deal with this too. And then there's also, I'm sort of just going to make a call on the fly. Chuck, I trust your perspective. There's obviously, I think that there's a mental health angle to any mass shooting. I think that's a safe thing to say. Yeah. I think that's a safe comment, and that is the case here as well. And there's another detail about this shooting that is being capitalized on, in particular by right-wing commentators that I think are eager to use any tragedy to make a point, or to sort of further a talking point. And I know that you've never shied away from that stuff in past. There's a couple of well, there's I guess sort of an approach that you take in any mass shooting, and you and I have both been in the business a long time, and unfortunately have covered several of these situations, more of them in the United States, but when it happens in Canada as well, and families and police, but in particular bereaved families, will say, we ask that you focus on the victims. We ask that you focus on, in this case, there's a young girl, as far as we know, and again, as we record this episode, things can change, but she's clinging to life in hospital. There are people, more than 25 people wounded in this. When you're talking wounds, like you're talking gunshot wounds, let's be clear here. These aren't, people didn't trip and sprain their ankle. Like, there's serious injuries here. But there's a lot of talk about the shooter as well. And I think that we should hit it head on. And I think we should talk about it like real people. We're talking to Senator Charles Adler here in our feature interview presented by Mercedes-Benz Edmonton West. We'll go there in a second. I think it's time to say a couple of things that need to be said here. And I'll be looking to our live chat as well. That's powered by Park Power here on this Friday episode of Real Talk. Our friends at Friesen Brothers do want to remind you, with the long weekend coming up, Family Day, we're celebrating that on Monday, the 16th of February. These aren't pre-recorded ads, right, guys? I'm always doing this live, and so I can point out that, like, on a family day, this family day, I think it's going to mean a whole lot more to a lot of people and to some families in British Columbia, and we think of other families across the country as well that will be thinking of ones that they have loved and lost. It's going to be a very difficult family day. Friesen Brothers is hosting an all-day family day brunch buffet. Maybe on the fly, maybe you make a decision that we're going to do it differently. We're getting the whole family together. We're going to sit down. We're going to break bread. The Friesen Brothers in Edmonton, Glenora, Rabbit Hill, Stony Plain, Hinton Hill, Peace River, High Prairie, Fort Saskatchewan, and Drumheller. They're hosting a family day brunch. They've got a carving station, an omelet station. It's going to be amazing with special family day prices, $25 for adults, $20 for seniors. Kids under 12 are just $10. You can learn more at friesen.com/familydaybrunch. Or if you heard your locale mentioned, go ahead and just pop into your Friesen Brothers, your local Friesen Brothers, from 8 to 4. That's 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. on Monday, February 16th. Our friends at Solar by Kuby recognizing first responders with their Powering Those Who Protect promotion. If you're a police officer, firefighter, military personnel, 911 operator, member of Canada's military, search and rescue, you name it, if you're a first responder, the team at Kuby is going to knock 5% right off the top of your solar install. You can learn more on their website, kuby.ca. That's kuby.ca. This is a great time to get in touch, get that free solar quote, because they're starting to fill up fast. Their installation schedule for spring and into summer. The sooner you have your panels up, the sooner you save money. You can get in touch with the team today at kuby.ca, kuby.ca. Ask them about their Powering Those Who Protect program. Our friends at UCAN Youth Services, you can find them on Instagram at UCAN Youth Services. There's a great video they posted there a while ago. We've highlighted it because I think it's really something you got to check out. These are young people, young adults, 18 to 24, that have showed up and participated in UCAN's pre-employment programs. They've got the Road to Work program, the Verto program, and these young people are graduating. I'm smiling as they're smiling. I'm looking at these videos, and they're talking about the jobs that they have in different industries, hospitality and construction and the like. They're entry-level jobs at this point. That's the whole idea with UCAN. It's like you get leveled up, you get out of kind of harm's way, to be honest with you. You start running with a better crowd, and you start realizing your potential. The confidence that these young people have gleaned is really, truly amazing. It's a powerful video. You can find it on Instagram at UCAN Youth Services, and you can always check out ucan.ca. If you'd like to show your support to this program or partner with UCAN, if you're an employer looking for entry-level employees, you're not going to find better employees than the ones graduating from UCAN. And a big shout out to Real Talker Michael, who did an incredible job crunching the numbers and presenting an Alberta win, which we were happy to feature in our most recent episode. That was the 12th of February. Michael put a spreadsheet together and realized that Alberta has sent more Olympians to Italy than any other Canadian province per capita. Pretty cool stuff. Michael qualifies to win tickets to the March 21st Oilers game, courtesy of Play Alberta, just for submitting an Alberta win. Albertans are winning every single day at playalberta.ca and on the Play Alberta app. There's a major casino winner every hour, and all the revenue stays right here in the province. You can download the Play Alberta app today to get started with casino, sports, and lottery all in one app. You must be 18 or over to play, and when you gamble, please use your game sense. Charles Adler joining us. Yes, he's a Canadian senator, but he is speaking on his own behalf, of course, and not on behalf of his Senate colleagues, joining us in our feature interview presented by Mercedes-Benz Edmonton West. RCMP have confirmed what, and I don't mean to be candid or glib or sort of lighthearted about this. I will just say RCMP have confirmed what I think most people would have suspected, and that was that there were mental health issues at play with this individual, an 18-year-old. We say the alleged shooter, but obviously the individual that is alleged to have killed their two family members and then murdered these young kids in an EA at Tumbler Ridge Secondary School. Police have also confirmed, Charles, that the shooter was trans and began their transition approximately, they say, 4 to 6 years ago, depending on an 18-year-old that had dropped out of the high school 4 years ago. Police are still working to determine on whether or not there was a specific connection to the victims, but it is assumed at this point that there was not. It has obviously prompted some very ugly commentary, some of it in our Real Talk live chat, if I'm being honest with you. People are popping in and I think trying to stir things up or trying to further a narrative that they have, and I think it's something that with proper sensitivity that we should talk about. And I'm just curious where your head's at. I think that we need to talk about mental health. I think that to a certain degree, we obviously need to talk about guns. And I think we should talk about what the facts are and what the facts aren't.
Well, look, there's going to be an intensive investigation, as I think anyone can imagine on this. And the questions will be asked. My heart goes out to the RCMP and Tumbler Ridge because they did a fabulous job. They showed up within moments, and everybody now knows that if it wasn't for our Mounties, this horrible situation would have been even more horrible. The Mounties saved lives. So now the other side of the Mountie file, as it were. Some people are going to second guess why whoever it was in an RCMP uniform that has responded at least once, maybe multiple times, at this home where the shooter lived. One is going to ask the question, I think the whole country will ask the question, why didn't they take the shooter's weapon or weapons away? Why is it that someone who clearly had mental health issues, why is it that they were allowed to maintain a weapon? I don't have the answer. I don't even probably have all of the right questions because this investigation is fresh. But clearly, most Canadians believe, and I think that most Canadians in Tumbler Ridge believe, that people with serious mental health issues are a threat to themselves, of course. They're also potentially a threat to their families, which is the case here, and a threat to other people, which is also the case here. So this isn't about me disparaging people from having firearms. It is simply to say that some people clearly are not in their right minds, and having them around firearms is not beneficial to anyone, including themselves.
Yeah, including themselves. Yeah, and like you, I mean, you've already kind of detailed this, but I just hearing from police kind of the history with that home and the history with that family and the mental health struggles. I've seen people posting along the general themes of it's like a grim reminder and a heartbreaking reminder of the lack of mental health supports, not just across the country, but in particular in rural areas, in northern parts of Canada, in smaller towns. We don't know. I mean, I've been trying to imagine. Well, I guess I've probably, to be honest with you, Chuck, been trying not to imagine, but I haven't been able to help but imagine the younger brother, the 11-year-old brother, who maybe it seems weird for me to point this out and say this, but it's important, is totally innocent in all of this. Like an 11-year-old brother was murdered, and the mother, like, we don't know what this upbringing was. Like, I'm not going to start speculating. That's not responsible, and that's not the point. But any parent killed by their own child, and I have to imagine that there was anguish experienced by this mother for probably quite some time before all of this unfolded. Do you know what I mean? We don't know the struggles of the mom.
We just had the situation that was publicized around the earth, and certainly in Canada as much as the United States. I mean, Rob Reiner and his wife. I mean, they were murdered by their son, who had a history of mental health issues. And I'm sure there will be lawsuits because he shouldn't have been around a weapon. He probably shouldn't have been outside of the last institution where he's being rehabbed, or certainly it's questionable as to whether or not the drugs he was getting during the rehab. Anyway, I don't want to rehash all of it. But the point is that you've got a situation where, of course, parents love their child no matter what. That's how we're made. But in some cases, we've got a child that is so difficult, and we're doing our best to help them. But nevertheless, there's only so much that we can control. And all I'm saying, of course, is that when there is only so much that we can control, if we can control access to a weapon, then I think that we have to do our best to deny them access of those weapons.
You wonder, like, if there's all these, and I don't want to take anything away from the political leaders that are there. I mean, if anything, I thought that the Prime Minister, not breaking down into tears, but certainly getting emotional when he was addressing reporters in Ottawa and pressing pause on there was a big government announcement. He was supposed to be over in Munich, Germany, and he did the right thing in canceling that. Pierre Poilievre talking about being a father and his own perspective there, and David Eby, I thought, did a remarkable job. I mean, we expect elected officials to be able to do this, but let's not ignore the fact that it's very difficult. Premier Eby, I was watching it live, like I'm sure many other Canadians were, and he steps in front of Mike. He's just kind of got his parka on. He says, listen, I've been here for 90 minutes. He's going to be there longer than that, but he wanted to update media. He wanted to update the nation. Everybody's carrying it live, and there he is, not speaking from a script. He's just speaking from the heart, and he's talking, and the mayor of Tumbler Ridge, who I got a smile on my face. I don't know the mayor of Tumbler Ridge. The reason I'm smiling is just because when I saw him on camera, I went, yeah, checks out. Like, I think he was kind of wearing a jean jacket or kind of an older, like a work jacket. And he's got his toque on, and he's got a beard just like you, Chuck. And this is a guy that he's probably, I don't know what he does for work, but I guarantee you that he's got a job, and the mayor thing is on the side because he probably, I'm speculating, but I bet he just has a huge love for his community. And maybe a few of his friends kind of asked him if he would consider, like, I don't know the situation, but in small towns across the country, there are these mayors and reeves that oftentimes have like 2 or 3 other jobs, and they do other things. And all of a sudden this guy is in front of national and international cameras, and people almost expect him to have an answer, and sort of thrust into that national spotlight under the worst imaginable circumstances. The point I'm making is that these political leaders, in particular at the higher levels of government, the provincial and federal governments, will be expected to make a meaningful response here that goes beyond words. And some of that will be, obviously, like Premier Eby said, bringing out mental health counselors, sending as many available counselors as possible to that community to, I would imagine, set up almost like a residency for a while. You'd never call it that, but to be there as people will need them in the days and weeks and months to come, the counseling resources that are there. But we'll all sit here and talk about how, gosh, you can't get a mental health counselor. Gosh, a family member of mine is experiencing schizophrenia or is bipolar or is off their meds again. Or it feels like every family has some sort of connection like that. And if you don't, friends, count your blessings. But many families can understand the anguish of having no supports for somebody that they deeply love. Many of these people would be experiencing homelessness. Many of these other people are incarcerated, not getting the supports they need there. Do you see an event like this, a tragedy like this, making a meaningful impact on government commitments to things like mental health resources in northern communities?
Well, everyone talks a good game when something happens, but it's not that I want to be cynical. I owe it to people to be realistic. I don't know how much will change. I mean, right now we're going to show these people as much love as possible, and as much love as possible includes, of course, sending in mental health professionals. But this is after the fact. How much this will change budgets on mental health, I honestly don't know. But, one of the things that I think we owe it to people, Ryan, because every family does have people with issues. We owe it to all of those families who are paying attention to us right now to state what may be obvious, but it has to be stated. Overwhelming majority. I don't want to do the cliche 99%, whatever, but it probably is over 99.9% of people with mental health issues are not violent, and they don't pose a threat to anybody. And I would never want anyone to take away from the conversation we're having at this great kitchen table called Real Talk. I wouldn't want anyone to take away the notion that either Ryan or yours truly or anyone who's corresponding with us right now thinks that mental health, people who have mental health issues are dangerous people. A tiny percentage of them are. And what I was suggesting earlier was because this individual, what person we call the so-called the shooter, because the shooter had obvious mental health issues that some police officers were aware of. That's why there's the nagging question out there as to why the weapon wasn't taken away.
Yeah. And Emily G in our live chat, powered by Park Power, makes another important point and says being trans does not make someone dangerous. Having serious unaddressed mental health issues can make someone dangerous. And I think that's an important issue as well. And I know a lot of people are shying away from conversation around, the shooter and that particular detail. Other people, let's be real, Chuck, are pouncing on it and capitalizing on it.
Of course they're pouncing on it.
And making the most they can of it.
Ryan, let's put all our cards on the table. I mean, this is just too bloody important, okay? You and I have had great gifts given to us by our parents. There's no way that we can just take credit for the talent that we've had and that people were willing to pay good money for. And so if either or both of us had decided to work in the States in a particular medium, let's just call it, for the sake of this discussion, far right-wing talk, whether it's on radio or television, either and both of us, and I can speak for myself because I did work in the States for a number of years, and naturally I had a lot of offers that I thought of as, sewer money. So if I wanted to go for the sewer money, by the sewer money, I mean traffic and garbage, like doing the anti-gay thing, the anti-black thing, the anti-minority thing, the anti-immigration thing. If I wanted to go full tilt, far right, the money was, and I generally don't use the word money and obscene in the same sentence. I'm a pro-private sector person. I'm a capitalist, a democratic capitalist, capitalism with regulations, Canadian style.
Sure.
But if I was only about the money, if greed was the only thing that mattered to me, that's what I would have done. I would have taken the sewer money, and on this day, this week, I would be sewering trans people. Would I develop some mental health issues if I were doing that and try to live with myself? Probably. But the point is, that's what's happening right now all over the world. Those people who are making their sewer money on sewering minorities, including people who are trans, are of course using this. But if we just want to be rational, reasonable, balanced Canadians, we all have to understand that correlation is not causation. This person very likely had serious mental health difficulties before transitioning. And to say that it's the transitioning that created it, to say that the transitioning is the cause, there's correlation. Yes, this person has issues, this person is trans, but the idea that it's the transition that caused these children to die, that the teachers to die, that mother to die, that brother to die, that is obscene and ridiculous. And for anyone who's listening to this right now, who does want to make money on sewering people, and in sewering people, creating a lot of collateral damage, affecting the parents in northeastern British Columbia, affecting everyone in this country and everyone in the world who cares about this. If you want to damage people all over the world by sewering trans people, well, go for it. but you're certainly not going to get my respect. And Ryan, I don't want to speak for you here, but I think I speak for you and your family on this.
Well, I would just say, and Johnny's actually pulled some stats for us. We asked him to do that, and Johnny, we'll get to that in a sec. But and I was sharing with you yesterday. I'm not even going to mention the guy's name. There's a few people, sort of like the usual suspects in Canadian media, and the United States has its own, and many of them do very well, like you said. Like Peter, by the way, is shouting you out. Chuck, he says, "What a great analogy! Sewer money for gutter content." But there are a few, and they're predictable. And I saw one of them. I saw one of the posts yesterday. I could have told you. I could have predicted it. I would have bet my house on it that this guy would be out. This guy who has a remarkable ability to be wrong about everything, and gets hundreds of thousands of views on his boneheaded, evidence-free takes. Was taking big swipes and big shots at the trans community through all this. And Johnny and I, we were briefly talking about this yesterday, and you said, well, why don't I go dig up some numbers? And so you did.
Yeah, it's probably the worst research I've had to do this week, but I knew we would talk about it near the end of the week. Of course, you always want to speak about the victims first, and you don't want to isolate the shooter, but I mean, the public is making this a big debate, so... it's hard though too, because you go and look at Canadian mass shootings. There's not a lot of data. I mean, you go to any kind of study or even the Wikipedia page, you can scroll down in one scroll. So the lens I used was for the States because it's obviously a bigger lens. But between 2013 and 2025, there are about 5,748 mass shootings in the U.S. When we say mass shootings, that means 4+ people shot, excluding the shooter. And of those 5,748 shootings, only 5 mass shootings involved a shooter or suspect identified as trans.
5 out of how many?
5 out of 5,748. So
okay,
that's about
0.1%.
0.1%, less than that. And so if we use a stricter definition, 4+ people killed, public locations, and we exclude gang or drug violence, it goes down to about 300 shootings, and 97.5% of those were cisgender men, 2% were cisgender women, 0.5% were transgender. Now, there's a lot of stuff being shared online. I'm sure you guys have seen this image that shows a different kind of stat using rate per population, because obviously, there's 350 million people in the States, only about 2 to 3 million identify as trans. So this image is being shared that shows overwhelmingly, trans shooters, the stats overwhelmingly are higher for trans shooters, but it's false as well. So if we go to that, it's about 2.5 incidents per million over the last decade. We're trans shooters. And if we go to the other side, 17 incidents per million people over 10 years were non-trans population. I didn't use race or anything like that. I thought that was somewhere I didn't want to go. But if you could, I quickly looked at a few things, not deep. And I mean, let's just say it, the overwhelming majority of mass shooters who kill a handful of people in a public place, a lot of them are schools, are white straight men. And that I'm not making excuses for the shooter or anything like that. What I'm saying is the issue here is mental health, but it looks to me like white straight men have a lot more mental health issues than transgender people do if we're looking at this study. But in the end, I don't care, because I'm not making excuses for the shooter. No matter what you want to say about this person, they were young, they had issues. I looked at more stats of whether shooters experienced sexual, physical abuse, mental health struggles at home when they were children. Those stats are overwhelming. And then you get into like serial killer details. Anyways, 40% experienced sexual abuse, 70% experienced mental or physical abuse. So I think in the end, what we're talking about here is, no matter who they are, and don't get me wrong, this person was a horrible, disgusting person, no matter if they were young or had mental health issues. But
what they did was horrible and disgusting.
That's what I meant. I didn't mean that.
What they did,
you know what I mean?
Disgusting.
Like, I'm not making excuses for this. What I'm saying is, we've got a mental health issue going on.
Yes.
People need to talk to people. People need, like, when I read that police went into the home several times for incidents, removed guns, and then brought them back. Like, these are big red flags for no matter who the person is, especially in this day and age when people are getting murdered on the street in broad daylight, to act. And we need to act quicker, especially here in Canada when we have so many fewer incidents. We can prevent so much more than the States. They're dealing with way more.
I want to thank you for getting those numbers out there. Lorraine says we need to quote those numbers over and over and over. I don't know about you, Charles, but like for me, part of me is like, you know, I think that the stats and the you know, Johnny like sort of laying that out for us, I think it's important for people to hear that, and I think it's important to understand. And at the same time, part of me is like, give your head a shake if you think that that's the issue and that's what's causing this. Do you know what I mean? Like, I know that there's a lot of people that aren't even going to touch this. They're not even going to talk about it. That's not really our style. But I think when we talk about it, it has to be to an end goal. And that is just that reminding people, like you said, correlation, causation. What are the real factors here? Where does our focus need to be? Where does the help need to begin, including financial supports from the federal government, including community supports that'll happen in church communities and neighbors reaching out to one another and psychologists and mental health counselors that'll be there. This is just a big red herring, but it plays. Like you said, it plays. I had a guy stop me at an Oilers game. What was it? The 31st of January. I remember because it was after our Real Talk Pond Hockey Classic, and he stopped me. And he was saying it as a supporter of the show. He told me he downloads the podcast every single day, but he goes, you know, you would have like 1 million views if you would just get a little grittier, if you just go swing a little harder to the right. He says, especially in Alberta. I said, do you think I don't know that? And we had a laugh, and it was more of a funny comment that he made. But it's obvious. It's obvious why these guys are saying shit like this.
Well, I mean, let's just be brutally honest about this. We both worked for, a company where if we had just decided to tilt right, predictably, right, no use of any kind of discernment.
Yep.
Just automatically do the right is always right, and the left is always wrong. And the right is always moral, and the left is always immoral, and the right always has a work ethic, and the left never does. The right is always honest. The left isn't. Go on and on and on. But with all this kind of the right is respectable as far as families are concerned. The right wing is safe for families. The left is. If we wanted to play that game, right, it's entirely possible that those companies might have felt more strongly about us.
Well, yeah, I don't know. I felt the writing was on the wall for me, but I would just say that, you know, it's really unfortunate, and one of the and we don't need to dwell on this any further. We can move on, but I would just say this in closing, and I just think it's important. Sometimes people may not notice this stuff, but we'll do like a really important conversation or show. And so I don't want to say a specific type of show and kind of shine a negative spotlight on someone, but subject matter that is important. But you know, not everyone's going to listen to it because it's like heavy or it's niche or it's whatever, right? And we'll do these shows and then people, you know, our online critics, our trolls, and I appreciate them as a matter of fact. All they do is drive us in the algorithm, so it's great. But they'll reach out and they'll say they'll like pick a tweet of ours or like a post on Instagram and they'll say something like, 72 likes and 4 comments. Nobody gives a shit about, and then they'll point to like deplorable over here and they'll say, look at this, like 600,000 views and 5,000 likes and 1,000 comments. And it's like the worst possible take on something like just this. Right. There's no empathy. There's no intelligence. There's no common sense. And you look at that and you kind of like, you do have these moments where I'm not saying I start thinking, should I start being that type of a storyteller? But you have those moments where you're like, where's the public at? Where's the public at if like positivity has, and again, maybe I just need to stop using social media as some sort of a barometer on, well, let me say I don't use it as a barometer on what's important, but you're like, where's the public at in like a boneheaded, just a scathing, evidence-free take on something just connects and trends and people just latch onto it and share it. And the real stuff, the important stuff just goes without connecting with the average person. I'll be honest with you, heart on my sleeve, it's pretty discouraging sometimes. Well,
of course, look, Ryan, I'll make this real easy, and people can now listen, watch a story that they will never forget. Okay, so Uncle Chuck has a story.
Okay, gather around.
Among the multiple obscene offers I got, to make the sewer money.
We've never heard you talk like this before, by the way. I'm very much enjoying this candor.
Well, I mean, I said earlier that you bring the best out of me, and unfortunately, the launching point for this discussion is a horrific tragedy, and if a horrific tragedy doesn't get us to be
Get
as
real.
candid as possible with each other, nothing does. So, among these sewer money offers, in one particular case, I'm not going to mention the name, person who was in charge of a very large network. Asked me to consider working for them and wanted to audition me, as it were, guest host some shows. This is in the United States. And he asked me into his office, of course. That's where we had the discussion. And he said to me, I want you to offer me the monologue. He knew that I didn't need scripts to do monologues. So he said, I want you to do a monologue that only appeals to me. An audience of one. Like these days with the United States, you see someone like a Pam Bondi, who's an okay lawyer, and she was an okay this and an okay that. She's not totally vacant. She's not an airhead or anything like that. But she came across as vacant and airheaded and lacking empathy, lacking intelligence, lacking anything. Why? The other day at the committee on Epstein, why was she sounding like that? Because she had an audience of one. She was just trying to appeal to one person, Donald Trump. So in this particular case, it's an audience of one. And the person said to me, if you just have an audience of one, just me, and you're doing a monologue customized for me, can you please do that for me? And there was a camera there. He promised that it wasn't attached to anything. So it was just a dead camera. So he wanted me to look into the camera and do the monologue for him. And as you can imagine, the monologue that I did was absolutely filthy. It was racist. It was homophobic. It was xenophobic. It was white supremacist, white nationalist, Christian nationalist, all of those things. Everyone knows exactly what I'm talking about. Far right American stuff. It was beyond MAGA, okay? So I did that. I went for about, 10, 12, 15 minutes, whatever it was. And when I was wrapped up, I then looked at this person who asked me to do this. And the person was in tears, Ryan. Okay? The person is in tears. And the person says to me, I really appreciate what you've just done for me. If you do this for me tonight and every night, I will make you the richest person in American media.
Jeez.
The richest person in American media at the time was Oprah Winfrey. And I said, well, Oprah's the richest. And he says, yeah, I'll make you richer than Oprah. Now, some of that could just be American, BS, okay? But there's no doubt in my mind, none, that if I was willing to sell my soul, if I was willing to forget where I come from, if I was willing to dishonor, thou shalt respect mom and dad and all of that, if I was willing to part with mom and dad, my memory of them, my heritage, my values, my Canadian way of life, my fair and balanced, rational Canadian values, all the things that you and I talk about. If I was willing to essentially to go into some sort of witness protection program, to become a different person, basically to be an actor, that's how I would have to justify it to myself. Well, this isn't really me. I'm just doing an act, and I'm behaving like a white supremacist jerk, and I'm being paid multiple millions of dollars for it. Yeah, I could have done that. And I'm not the only one. There are many people who get those kinds of offers. There are many people you watch today or listen today who are taking the sewer money. But thank God for our parents. I always think about our parents and our grandparents, our ancestors, our neighbors, the people we went to school with here in Canada, and others. If we think about the people that we grow up with, the people who matter to us, and understand in our hearts and minds that those friendships, those kinships, our heritage, our Canadian values, they matter more to us than making a few extra bucks or maybe even a few million extra bucks. Well, then we can maintain our sanity. And yes, we can maintain our mental health. But I'm just saying that, when we have these kinds of conversations, I need for the audience to know that both Ryan Jesperson and I could go there if it was just about the clicks. And when you see people and hear people who do this horrible stuff, this horrible, hateful stuff where it's clear that they're just trying to gin up hatred among those people who actually want to hear this, who want to bathe in it. What I would call cultural pornography.
Yeah.
Okay, the cultural pornographers of the world. So yes, there's a lot of money in pornography. There's a lot of money in political pornography and cultural pornography. But I need for the people listening and watching this to know that many of us who could do that make a choice. And why do we make that choice? Because we love you. And loving you and having your friendship, having your kinship, and being your neighbors is more important to us than anything else. Because without our friends and our families and our heritage and our country, I don't know what we have. I don't want to turn this into another pitch for Canada, but I have to. Not because I'm a Canadian senator, but simply because I love this country. And I would say to my dear friends and neighbors in Alberta, if you love Canada, you must vote to remain. And no matter what kinds of swindles the swindlers are offering you, no matter what the cultural pornographers in Alberta are offering you, it is sewer money. It's not real. That life is not real. I ask you to please, please love your country and mark the X beside remain. I don't know specifically what the ballot question will be, but when it comes to leaving Canada or staying in Canada, I desperately, desperately want you to stay because I love you.
Beautiful stuff, Chuck. You point that out right at you said so many wonderful things there. Let me just let that breathe for a second. But isn't it interesting that we can all widely assume, and I would put money on it, not that I'm recommending anybody does put money on this, but if you do, you may find the odds at playalberta.ca must be 18 or over to play. But in all seriousness, I would put money on the fact that Alberta will see a referendum this year. We can't talk right now about, you can't even in your impassioned plea to Albertans right now, you can't say please vote yes or please vote no, because we don't know what the question's going to be. So I don't know yet if I'm in the yes camp or the no camp, because we don't know how the question's going to be framed, but it's pretty easy, and you don't need to know the framing of the question. It's pretty easy to say Alberta needs to stay in Canada. That's easy to say. We'll read the question carefully. I will have either a yes or a no emblazoned on my chest through that entire process, and I know you will too. Dustin is watching us on our Real Talk live stream presented by California Closets. He's checking it out on Facebook, and he says, I don't agree with him on several issues, but damn do I respect Charles more and more by the day. You're winning over Dustin on Facebook today, Chuck. So that's a good sign.
Thanks a lot, Dustin.
Super Chat Ken's kicked in $5 to the chat. Ken's just a huge supporter of the show. He says mental health treatment funding was insufficient before. Even if increased, it might never catch up to the damage that has been caused by many social media forces. Noob says what that shooter did is not excusable, but how terrifying and hard would it be if you are trans right now? All the hateful speech, all of those public displays. Goramet says it is seriously smooth brain to say that this is caused by one issue that happens to be your pet issue to hate on. Just a ton of really wonderful insights here, I think. Emily G talking about Mayor Thorpe and the perpetrator there. Obviously, a lot of people are sharing their personal perspectives on some of the tragedies that this nation has grappled with. Peter says Canadians have not developed the scar tissue for mass shootings in this country. Peter, what a powerful way to put it. He says, but no matter where they are deeply upsetting. Erica says publicly funded mental health care is stressed to the max. She says there's lots of private options available, but who has $250 an hour for therapy? Not many people. Erica is bang on with that. A lot of other people, Charles, are talking about how, let me quote Lorraine here. She puts it into words. Thanks for your YouTube channel membership, Lorraine. She says, mental health needs the same attention as cancer, heart disease, and all the things. If you look at the stats, I feel like we've said this. I almost wonder, do I say it too much? But I 1 in 5 people will grapple with or encounter or live with a mental health challenge, mental illness, let's call it what it is, in their lifetime. 1 in 5, right? Like you look around your workplace, you look around the lunchroom, you look like wherever, look around you, 1 in 5. How are we, those are the same. That's actually you're more statistically likely, just barely, but you're more likely statistically to deal with mental illness than you are as a male to deal with prostate cancer, as a woman, as a female to deal with breast cancer. But we don't treat it the same, right? Can you imagine if a woman finds a lump in her breast and goes to get it tested and like hopefully she can get in to get it tested, and then we sort of say, it's going to be $250 an hour if you'd like to talk to a professional. Well, what happens if I can't afford that? Well, I guess we'll kind of see what happens. We won't treat it like that.
No, look, the number one mechanism, if you will, in the human condition, and I guess it helps us to survive many horrible situations in some respect. And in many other cases, unfortunately, it drives us deeper into the morass. And that's denial. The word denial is often used, as something that's a negative. But if you examine your life, if you're out and your car is stuck in the middle of nowhere, and in Canada, that there's a lot of places that can be in the middle of nowhere, and your car is stuck, and you're freezing cold, and you have no idea when the help will arrive, and you go into denial. You deny how cold you are because it helps you survive. But in some cases, when it comes to mental health, we also go into denial, and we go into denial about the help that we need. People around you go into denial about the help you need, because for whatever reason, we have not evolved to a point where we look at mental health the same way as we look at any other condition. And, I mentioned earlier that, Ryan's mom is a teacher. Ryan's dad is a doctor. And I'm sure that, Dr. Bruce, if he were in this conversation with us, would tell us that many of his patients, regardless of their ailments, whether they're physical or mental, are in denial. And that's why they don't go for treatment for a long time. I mean, the other night, we got the news that the late, great Catherine O'Hara had colorectal cancer. Now, I don't know her file. I don't know whether she had a colonoscopy. I have no idea. But I use this occasion when we're talking about denial to say that for anyone who's listening and watching right now, if you're over 50, 55, and you haven't had a colonoscopy, please have one. Because it's the number one way to arrest the problem of colorectal cancer.
Did you hear about, James Van Der Beek as well, Chuck? The younger actor, Dawson's Creek fame and the like. He just passed away this week as well. I didn't know until my wife told me. I was like, James Van Der Beek, what? And it turns out like he has released I don't have them here handy, but people can go find them himself. He's been posting before his passing just these incredible videos, and it's shocking to see him. The weight loss is apparent. He goes, one of his videos he starts and he says something like, I'm just a guy who's way too skinny with cancer making videos in an apartment. Like he's kind of being a little bit, he's being lighthearted about something really heavy. The writing's on the wall for him at this point, and he shared, and my wife shared it with me. In other words, I am one of many to whom James Van Der Beek's advocacy resonated. And he said through the course of these videos, which my wife shared with me, he was like, I waited too long to go see a doctor. There was no early detection. This may, and I'm loosely quoting him, I'm paraphrasing, but maybe this would have turned out different had I got to it sooner. Carrie sends this to me and she says like, and I am pretty decent. Johnny and I try to hold each other accountable on like going for annuals or checking in with family docs. And I always encourage my friends in this audience to do the same thing. But same sort of a thing for a guy that was maybe not quite half of Catherine O'Hara's age, but similar circumstance. Someone saying, gosh, I wish I would have checked in sooner.
So much of this stuff is preventable. And so all of this stems from the conversation about denial and the denial in this case of mental health issues. But I guess I'm trying to just be a little holistic about it and say that as human beings, we're in denial of all sorts of medical issues because it's just it's just the way we are. And I mean, one of the reasons why I think it's wonderful to have these kitchen table conversations is we get to speak extremely candidly. And on a day like this, because of what happened in Tumbler Ridge, more candidly than usual. And let's talk candidly about our mental health. Let's talk candidly about our physical health. How much do we do? How much could we do for ourselves and for our loved ones by taking this seriously?
Michael's in our live chat, powered by Park Power, your friendly local utilities provider. He says, can we all agree, regardless of background, that we as a society have failed anyone that's a mass shooter? We really need to take mental health seriously, and we haven't been. Chrissy B, you'll love this, Chuck. Her full handle is Chrissy B, Canadian First. I like that.
I do love it.
Chrissy's flying her flag. Says, we have a mental health crisis, and how could anyone be shocked by that? Spend 2 minutes scrolling any social media channel. You'll have your source of the crisis, and it's only getting worse. Matthew YEG, thanks for your channel membership. Matthew says, I said this yesterday, but it's beyond time that mental health be fully brought into the public health system. Psychiatrists aren't enough. People shouldn't pay hundreds of dollars to access therapy. Chuck, our hours is past. You and I didn't even talk. Do you have a few minutes? Do you want to talk about the halftime show? Do you want to talk about the bridge? Do you want to talk about RFK Jr. snorting coke off toilet seats? Like, do we want to go there?
Ryan, I'm here for you. I don't care whether we do 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. I don't think of this as work. I don't think of this as labor. I think of people in this country who are out, and some places are colder than others. But you know, the folks who are, you know, on the hydro towers, and then the firefighters, and the, you know, people who are driving ambulances, and the people that we learned about earlier in this show, death care workers. You know, that's real labor. This is a labor of love for both of us, and just whatever you need.
I love it. Okay, well, let's what am I going to say? Let's lighten the load by talking about a major trade dispute and a bridge. Let's go to lighter subject matter, which is the international crisis between our largest trading partner.
Well, I love that story because I love Gordie Howe.
Okay,
Gordie Howe's one of my idols. I mean, he's up there with the Mark Messiers and the Wayne Gretzky's and Rocket Richards.
And Mark and Wayne would say the same thing about Gordie. Hey, here, we're going to pay a couple of bills, Chuck, and then we'll be right back with you. Charles Adler, Senator and Lifetime Achievement Award-winning broadcaster in our feature interview presented by Mercedes-Benz Edmonton West. Here's something that we'll do, Chuck, that's a little bit different than big mainstream media. Ambustion is in our chat, says, I missed the start of the show. Was it Ambustion or was it somebody else? Hang on, I just lost this. Somebody's asking me. Oh, gosh, it wasn't Ambustion. Look at this live chat. We have a good problem on our hands because it just scrolls so fast we lose it.
Too many folks.
Too many folks. But anyways, who was it? Someone in here said, I missed the beginning of the show. Sorry if you already mentioned it. Said, but Real Talk, we know that you partner with an insurance company. And what insurance company is it? Because they want to get a quote from it. Now, I'm going to tell you, hey, this is Real Talk. No one else is going to do this. We don't currently have an agreement with this insurance company. They're not paying to be mentioned on the show. But I like the cut of their jib, and I like how they roll. And there's a reason why we partnered with them in the first place. And Real Talkers, I'm going to be honest with you, we're really working hard to get them back. So I'll tell you what, it's Peace Hills Insurance, and you can find them online at peacehillsinsurance.com. And let me ask you this. This is actually really it's an Indigenous-owned insurance company, proudly Albertan, Canadian clients across the country. Do us a favor, Real Talkers, and I would say this about any of our incredible sponsors, you know, past, present, or even future. If you do take your business to these sponsors, you can do us such a solid by letting them know that you heard about it on Real Talk. So if you do happen to reach out to Peace Hills Insurance, you let them know you heard about it on Real Talk. That's also the case with our friends at North Road Investment Council. We love our monthly check-ins with Marshall and Carrie and the team. We've got another one coming up. As a matter of fact, Carrie Williams ran into him last night at the Edmonton Opera Dianne Kipnes Valentine's Gala. What a wonderful celebration that was. So cool to see Carrie out there and, of course, representing North Road Investment Council and supporting the arts in Edmonton. That's what the team at North Road does. They connect with community. They have relationships where they seek to understand their clients, the discerning families and foundations and associations that trust North Road Investment Council with the complexities of wealth accumulation and investment advisory services for clients both in and outside of Alberta. You can learn more about what makes North Road Investment Council different by checking out their website, northroadic.com. That includes their digital risk advisory services. This is highly unusual for an investment firm like this to have a full-time team member working on digital risk advisory. But that's what North Road's all about. All-encompassing advice and protection for your family's biggest assets. Are you at risk of digital compromise? I mean, are people going to hack your computers? Could people steal your wealth? Why not check out their digital risk quiz? You can find it on their website. Connect with Marshall Carey and the team at northroadic.com. A shout out to all the Athabasca University students that are making their way through their school year at the pace that works best for them. You know, Athabasca University has students that are ripping through undergrad degrees because they got nothing standing in their way, and they have other students that are taking their sweet time because they're caring for mom and dad. They're working a full-time job. Whatever the case may be, Athabasca University has programs and courses online designed so you can complete your education wherever and whenever it works for you. Open up your options with the online offerings at Athabasca University. Get it started today. Learn more about the AU Advantage by checking out athabascau.ca. California Closets reminding you that everything they manufacture is manufactured in our home province of Alberta. They're not shipping stuff in from overseas. This is a Canadian-owned company that sources everything as close to Western Canada as possible. That also allows them the confidence of guaranteeing everything that they install for the life of your home. You want to talk about investing with confidence? That's exactly what happens when you take your business to California Closets. And I know what some of you are thinking. You're thinking, I could never afford California Closets. Think again. If you go to their website, californiaclosets.ca, you can check out the different levels of installation that they can design. There's 4 different levels, right? And so it starts off with practical simplicity, and it works up all the way to luxury refined. So wherever your budget is at, they can find a perfect fit for you. And the consultation is risk-free. It's always free when you request that today at californiaclosets.ca. And finally, Real Talkers, before we get back to the Titan of Talk, Charles Adler, I want to remind you that Full House Lottery is back with more than $5 million in prizes, and that includes their Legacy Signature Dream Home, valued at $2.5 million, including $50,000 cash, an amazing Dream Haul package, an F-150, and a Moomba boat. You can take the $200,000 cash instead if you like. A dream renovation from Legacy Signature Homes, or a dream outdoor oasis from Green Tree Landscaping. Plus an early bird with more than $1 million in prizes, 31 days, 31 winners of a dream vacation, or $25,000. And the Big Bucks calendar is back as well, with a cash winner every single day of the year. It may sound too good to be true, but it's not. You can win big and change lives. Support the Royal Alexandra Hospital and the University Hospital by getting your tickets today at fullhouse.ca. If you'd like to link directly to Full House Lottery purchasing and you want to let them know that you heard about it on Real Talk, follow the link in our show notes or the link in our live chat. And that's just a way you can help out your pal Jespo and help out your favorite talk show too. Again, if you want to go directly to it, either check out the link in our show notes or visit fullhouse.ca. Charles Adler, our guest, and our feature interview presented by Mercedes-Benz Edmonton West, longtime broadcaster and, of course, a proud Canadian senator. Do we say representing Manitoba? You're a Manitoba senator, right? I know you're very proud of that. Do they kind of, is there like a Manitoba caucus in the Canadian Senate?
No, I mean, I'm representing Manitoba, but really I'm representing the country. That's how I look at it. I just happen to be from Manitoba, and obviously I pay attention to, we talked about, where you compress the country into a village, and you compress the village into a kitchen table, and that's what we do as we enter the great theater of the mind. And I suppose there's a lot of theater of the mind in public service as well. So yes, I think about Manitoba all the time because that's where I'm based, but it's impossible based on the life I've lived not to think about the country all the time. I mean, I've lived everywhere in the country, I've lived in Alberta 3 times. It's interesting when people in the Senate, whether it's staffers or senators or others who work in the Senate, when they talk to me about where I'm from, they often they often make the assumption, because they'll say it, how's Alberta? How's Alberta? What part of Alberta do you live in? They make this assumption that I live in. So my guess is that regardless of where I'm a senator from, I guess I drop the word Alberta, or I talk about Alberta things, and I talk about my friend Ryan Jesperson, and I guess people have the impression that that I'm based in Alberta, but I'm based in all of Canada the way I look at it. But yes, for the purposes of the Senate and this particular appointment, and as far as a Manitoba caucus is concerned, no, it doesn't. It doesn't work that way. All of us who are Manitoba senators know each other, but we don't discriminate. Some of my best friends are from Ontario.
Wow, how open-minded of you. Well, I want to talk about Windsor, because this is this is kind of the epicenter of
Sure.
of the latest. Kind of the latest, do I say attack? It feels like an attack from Donald Trump, who basically is doing everything he can. He's the president. He can do whatever he wants, but he wants to block the opening, the spring 2026 opening of the Gordie Howe Bridge, a $6+ billion bridge. Ottawa has footed the entire bill for this. And it's co-owned by the federal government and by the state of Michigan. And American workers were involved in its construction. American steel was used in its construction, but the president says the United States doesn't have enough of an ownership stake for him to be happy enough to see it open. Keep in mind, I'm just presenting the details, just the facts, ma'am. Sure. The details here is that in his first term as president, Donald Trump called this bridge, quote, a good idea. Where's your head at right now on the future of the Gordie Howe Bridge?
Well, I'm really glad that we're talking about the Gordie Howe Bridge, not just because I loved number 9 Gordie Howe, just as I loved number 9 Bobby Hull, and number 9 Rocket Richard, and number 99 Wayne Gretzky. I love that we're talking about this because it goes to the very big picture that we've been talking about ever since Donald Trump first became president, which was most people don't think of Kuzma, those people who work in public life, they call it Kuzma, but basically the agreement that we have with the United States and Mexico, so that, basically 99% of the stuff that we buy is tariff-free. Here's the thing. He won't stop, the bridge from being used. He's not going to do that. He's threatening. He threatens all the time. That's his game. That's his way of being the bully, feeling strong and powerful and all of that. But the reason I'm so glad we're talking about the bridge is because the fact that he won't block the bridge, the reason he won't block the bridge is the same reason he won't end up tearing up the free trade agreement. And the reason for that is the bridge is great for American business. They will make far more money with this bridge that we paid for, far more money on this than we will. Just as in every aspect of the free trade agreement, the Americans do far better than we are doing. Now, I am not Donald Trump. I don't want to be like Donald Trump. I have nothing to learn from Donald Trump except what it is that I treasure and what I don't treasure. I don't treasure anything about Donald Trump, but I treasure this conversation with Ryan Jesperson and everyone who's listening or watching Real Talk, because it gives us an opportunity to say this. It's all a gimmick with him. He won't block the bridge. It's great for America. And he won't block the free trade agreement because it's great for America. And I don't want to get into all the ins and outs of policy wonking, except to say this. Most of what we sell America, okay, oil and gas and grain, stuff that's in the ground, America turns all of that into something else. And the something else they turn it into makes more money for them than we're making. So if we're selling them oil and they're turning the oil into gasoline, which, by the way, we then buy from them, most of the gasoline that we use in Canada is made in America. We are giving them a raw material. They are adding value to it and selling it at a greater profit. They make more money for every liter of gasoline they sell us than for every liter of bitumen that we sell them. So I could take it across the board. I could take it to the aluminum and steel that we send them, the trees that we send them. All of the raw materials that Canada sends to the United States, they turn into a value-added product. The grain that we send them. I mean, I'm in Manitoba, right? I'm based in Manitoba. Talked about this just a few moments ago. I've got this huge train, okay, right behind where I live. I see the train every day, and the train is taking grain to the States. Much of the grain is going to Minnesota, next door to Manitoba. So what happens? We sell Minnesota the grain. They take much of the grain, turn much of it into cereal. So we're buying Kellogg's cornflakes and Rice Krispies and what have you for between $4.50 and $6.50 a box, depending on how big the box is. Well, you just know that they're making far more on the cereal that they're selling us with the grain that they're buying from us. They're making far more on the cereal than we are on the grain. So the big picture here is, if you forget everything that's being said here about trade, all you have to remember is this. The reason they've got a trade agreement with Mexico and Canada is because it's good for them and always better for them than it is for Mexico or Canada. So no, Donald Trump won't rip up the trade agreement, because Donald Trump will not rip up the American economy, because he owes his ego not to the little people. He can talk about the little people, the uneducated people, the MAGA people, all he likes. His ego is heavily invested in the people with big money in the United States respecting him. And the people with big money want to continue to make big money, and they're making huge money on Canada.
You reached out to me on Sunday afternoon, which is not unusual. You and I usually correspond through the week and just kind of shoot the shit as we do. And you had drawn kind of a direct line. I don't want to make the point for you. I want you to make the point. But there were two things that were going on. The president of the United States had just posted a brutal video. It's just absolutely racist. There's no other word for it. A brutal video depicting the former president and former First Lady, Barack and Michelle Obama, as primates. This amid Black History Month, by the way. Most people are aware of that story. And then Bad Bunny takes to the field in San Francisco, Santa Clara, for one of, as the commentators are saying, and some may disagree, but one of the most impressive and one of the most watched Super Bowl halftime shows of all time. And you kind of presented those two in one thought. Would you share it with the audience?
Well, you know, Ryan, if you've got the thought there, then I want you to read it back to me, and then I'll riff on it, because I can't remember the specific. You know, I mean, I just. It's no different than these conversations.
Can I just read it and then
spontaneously? Of course. Yeah,
let me read your text. This will give people an idea of how you text me, which is amazing. You elevate my thinking. You bring me higher, which is what, you know. But you said we got to talk about Trump's sick joke about the Obamas and tie it to the unity message during the Super Bowl halftime show. You said Bad Bunny reminds Americans of America. Trump reminds them of some dystopian, quasi-authoritarian Twilight Zone. You said there are ways to unify a country. Love everyone. Trump is only and always about division through hate. Quote, they're eating the cats, they're eating the dogs. That's what you texted me.
All right. I was obviously in better shape then than I am right now. But
well,
anyway,
it feels like an eternity has passed since the Super Bowl.
Okay, so here it is. I felt like hell when I saw the post on the Obamas. Okay, I just said to myself, we've got to get past this. We've got to get past this. And yes, it's Black History Month, but it's not about blacks exclusively. And it bothers the hell out of me when something like that happens. That, you know, all kinds of black personalities have to express their feelings about it, and far more black personalities express their feelings than white personalities. And whether you're black or white or brown or whatever, whether you identify with any of that or not, Donald Trump is about division, and he's about, you know, dividing the red states from the blue states, the whites from the browns and the blacks, and the blah 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 blah. It's really gross, And that's how he achieves his idea of power. I mean, let's just put the cards on the table. The Democratic Party has not been very intelligent in the last number of years on many things. If a mainstream Republican who doesn't play this ugly game of division, polarization, racism, etc., if a mainstream Republican had run against Kamala Harris, the mainstream Republican would have gotten 40 states. The mainstream Republican would have gotten many millions more votes. So the thing is, Donald Trump, in his mind, is winning big. And of course, he's not. If you look at his favorables, if you look at his numbers right now, it's in terrible shape. If there was an election, midterm election today, the Democrats would take over the House of Representatives. They'd have a 30 or 40 seat majority, maybe even larger, and they might even take over the Senate. And the reason for all of that is because Donald Trump does all these things to divide the country every single day, and many people are fed up with it. Then you go to something like Bad Bunny, and the message, and I know some people get all hung up on the fact that, he sings in Spanish. My God, a guy from Puerto Rico singing in Spanish. I mean, what has the world come to? Nobody, I got to see Bocelli a number of years ago in Vegas. And you know what, Ryan? Andre Bocelli insisted on singing in Italian. Imagine that. And there were, there was a full house there for Bocelli, and not a single person.
The audacity,
said,
Charles.
Why does he insist on singing in Italian? So anyway, so you've got Bad Bunny and he's singing in Spanish. And the other reason I find so much of this funny is because all of us who have been to concerts, we know bloody well, because of the amplification, because often the sound isn't very good, often because everybody is screaming throughout the concert. We can't even, we know the words from the records that we've listened to from the music, but when we're listening to it, often we can't even discern the lyrics. It doesn't matter. It's the beat, it's the tempo, it's the pulse, it's the feeling. It's called entertainment. Bad Bunny was entertaining, and in terms of his message wasn't red state versus blue state and black versus brown and rich versus poor and all this kind of nonsense. His message was unity. We're all in this together. Mm-hmm. It's the message of love. And that is the America. Yes, that's the America I grew up with. I never looked at going to America, working in America as working abroad, working outside the country. I never looked at it that way. I was just working in a different neighborhood. These were my neighbors, and I want desperately to believe that they are still my neighbors, and that this Trump nightmare, this dystopian nightmare, at some point will end. I think, and yes, I'm a born optimist. I have to be, because of the horrific background that is my heritage. I can't afford not to be optimistic. Mm-hmm. And so I'm optimistic that come November, the person who I think of right now as a pretty lame duck will be a very lame duck. Even this week, he said that he has to win. The Republicans have to win the midterms. The Republicans have to have a good day in November, because if they don't, he could be impeached again.
He said he will. He said if we don't win the midterms, I will be impeached, which is a wild thing for a president to say.
Well, yeah, but every now and then he says something that's absolutely true, because the evidence is mounting every day, and the articles are being drawn up as we speak. And as soon as the Democrats take over, they will impeach him. It's just a matter of whether or not, because he's been impeached twice already. I mean, he knows what this is about. The question is whether or not they'll get a majority in the Senate, because if the Democrats don't have a majority in the Senate, yes, he can be impeached in the House, but he isn't thrown out of office unless he gets a trial in the Senate. And the only way the trial in the Senate is worth doing is if you've got a Democratic majority, because then you've got a chance of convicting him. Yeah. So he's very worried about that. But the big picture here is that the message of love and the message of unity will always trump, and I'll use that word here for a reason, the message of love will always trump the message of hate. The message of unity will always trump the message of division. And why do I say this on Ryan Jesperson's Real Talk? Because I know that there are people who are paying attention to this, and they've got issues in their own lives. And I would just plead with everyone, whether it's a political issue, a psychological issue, a personal issue, whatever it is, always go to unity, always go to love. And I don't want to get into a lot of religion here, but I will simply say this. For the dominant religions in Western culture, and that would be Judeo-Christian culture, that's what most of us have grown up with in what we sometimes simply call Western culture. The message of love has been incredibly important. And the message of love is why these traditional religions have had a lot of staying power. Love is still, you take a look at music. Most music that inspires people is a compilation, an anthology of love messages. If you just do a simple cloud search, which is very simple to do, a 9-year-old can do it. Just go to Google and just look for love in today's music, yesterday's music from 30 years ago, 100 years ago, it doesn't matter. Love is always going to be the most overpowering message. That's what Bad Bunny delivered. And that's something Donald Trump cannot do. No matter how much he would want to do that, he could never do it. The only message he can deliver is hate. The only message he can deliver is division. And fortunately, in a country that's relatively free, with a relatively free press, the opportunity to do what Ryan and I are doing right now, it's impossible. It's impossible for that message to have sustaining power. That message burns out because it has a burn factor with people. Most people are good, and most people can only handle so much of that kind of bull.
Hey, by the way, Meta Modern in our chat just says, we could all just distill this down to try not to be an asshole. that from Meta Modern.
Te quiero, Charles Adler. You know what? I was talking to my mom after the Super Bowl, and she said, you know what? It reminded me of when you were born, because I was born in Miami in the 80s. She said, there was music in the air all the time. Like, Latin culture down there is incredible. Puerto Ricans, obviously, a lot of them there. And she said, it reminded me of when you were born. You would go out every night and it'd be hot. You'd be sweaty. There'd be Latin music in the air. I mean, I've been to Veracruz. If you've been to Mexico, if you've been to Latin nations, I mean, that spirit of, they're very family, community, crowd, all together as one, holding hands, jumping up and down kind of people. And it's like when you go to an opera, you don't expect to understand a single thing, but you're moved to tears at times, right? You go see the Phantom
I was
of the Opera.
moved last night at the Opera Gala. You should have seen the performances there.
I mean, and just the beat. I mean, when I was in Cuba, me and my partner renewed our vows there. We went to this thing on the beach and I couldn't understand a word, but the incredible sensation, the goosebumps you get from a Latin, from a reggaeton, from a Spanish beat, from the drums, from the rhythm. That's what music is about. Music isn't about, can I understand the lyrics and are they speaking directly to me? I mean, yes, that's what resonates about some of your favorite songs, but it's about the feeling it gives you. It's about the mood, the vibe in the air. Is this the perfect halftime performance for America? I don't know, but let's get a little taste of everything. You know what? I would be pretty surprised if before the contract is over between Rock Nation and Jay-Z, if he doesn't totally flip it on you and give you, I could see him giving us one of the biggest rock acts of
What does
today.
he have, 2 more?
He's got 2 more left. Wouldn't it be crazy if Jay-Z was like, yeah, I gave you, the biggest Latin star. I gave you the biggest female star in Rihanna. I gave you the biggest hip hop mogul in the game after he beat Drake and Kendrick. I gave you probably the biggest artist of the 2000s in Usher. I threw it back to Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg, all your favorite hip hop. What if he came out next year and just flipped it and was like, it's going to be Morgan Wallen, Garth Brooks. You know what I mean? He might just pull a troll on everyone. But I mean, it was, for me, watching it was good, but watching the reaction of Latin communities and Spanish communities and Puerto Rican communities in the States watching this halftime show was really what hit me. Just seeing the emotion in them. And that's what it's about, being represented. Coldplay's great. The Rolling Stones are awesome. Also not from both of those bands not from America, and we were overjoyed to see them perform because we related to that. It's just amazing to see people represented and get emotional about it. I thought it was beautiful.
Yeah.
It was beautiful, but in the interest of balance, we talk about balance all the time because we think of Canadians as people who love balance. So just to balance this off a little bit, I've got my hand up for a performer for next year's Super Bowl who does sing in English and is an American, and his name is Chris Stapleton. And I'll never apologize for saying positive things
the anthem.
about Chris Stapleton. He's just fabulous on so many different levels. And yes, I'm a subscriber to Sirius XM and have been for 25 years. And yes, I pay for it. This isn't, a commercial endorsement that I'm doing here. But the Chris Stapleton channel started about a year ago. And it is my favorite channel. And it's not just Chris Stapleton's music, but it's all the kinds of music that Chris and his wife really enjoy, some of the music that inspired him to do exactly what he does. And if Chris Stapleton was the performer next year, I would not be a complainer.
Nor would I. I want to read some comments in the chat here. MJB, thanks for being here. MJB says, thank you guys. Great show. The combined empathy of the three of you is a refreshing breath of fresh air. Appreciate that very much. East Coast Stoner says, what is this shit called love? Goes on to say another great show and have a great weekend. East Coast Stoner signs off with peace and pot. I like that, East Coast Stoner. I don't know if Chuck will be hitting the bong this weekend. I guess my guess is you won't, Charles.
I lay it all on the table.
Yes,
for you.
That's not your thing. Because I think
the thing is that once again the gifts that we get. One of the gifts that yours truly got was a throat.
Yeah.
And so it never made any sense to me
which is why the next time you come to Edmonton, I'm going to get us some high-powered cannabis gummies, and you and I could just sit on the couch, I'll take 75 milligrams, you take 5, and we'll just see how it goes. How's that?
Well, I'm not opposed to feeling good. I just don't want to hurt the throat.
Yeah, this is my segue to drugs and RFK Jr. and ultimately to our wrap of this episode. But I was going to bring this up, and I've saved it for the end, and I'm very proud of myself for leaving it to the end. But the Health and Human Services Secretary for the United States of America, Donald Trump's guy on the health file, RFK Jr., appears on Theo Von's podcast, comedian Theo Von's podcast, and they're both having a very candid conversation about their past drug use. And RFK Jr. starts talking about defying COVID orders at the time when people were not to gather. And he says, I needed my, actually, I think it's a compelling conversation that could be had, but that's not where we'll go. But he was talking about, he was going to go to his whether it was NA or AA or whatever, his like support meetings, his group meetings, says it was important to me to gather there anyway. And he said, besides, I'm not afraid of germs. And then he offers up this.
And I said, I'm not scared of a germ. I used to snort cocaine off of toilet seats. And I know this disease will kill me. Right. Like if I don't.
And Theo Von's going, right. Uh-huh. Theo Von's like, that's my 100
Theo's
million.
been there.
Theo's been there. So, Charles, your thoughts?
Well, I'm trying to imagine who on earth, as an employer, would ever employ RFK Jr., who talks about snorting cocaine off toilet seats. Who on earth would ever think of employing Robert F. Kennedy Jr. In any capacity involving health? So he is the Secretary of Health and Human Services. And I'm laughing, of course, but it's not funny. I mean, this guy.
No, it's not funny at all.
This guy has been influencing God knows how many hundreds of thousands of parents not to vaccinate their children. And he's a kook. And look, once again, to lay the cards on the table, I interviewed RFK Jr. many years ago, long before he was Secretary of Health and Human Services, and maybe before he started snorting cocaine off toilet seats. I interviewed him, and he was a so-called environmentalist at the time. He had just come out with a book, so this is the 1990s. So I don't know exactly what his problem was, but he sounded completely deranged. And so the interview that was supposed to last for an hour lasted for 15 minutes. After 15 minutes, I just thanked him and sent him on his way. And he was, in our studio live. So I was, with him one-on-one. This is in our studio in Toronto at the time. And I got royal hell from our listeners. The listeners were calling me not because I cut the interview off at 15 minutes. They thought that I was committing fraud. They thought that the person I was putting on the radio, and of course, this is the older days of radio. This is the early 90s, so it wasn't being streamed. There was no video. It was just audio. They thought that I had put someone up there, some actor playing the role of Robert F. Kennedy's son. It couldn't possibly be him. And so they were really, really down on me for putting this guy in the air because he was, and I'll just say it, crazy. He was just nuts. And how could Robert F. Kennedy's son be that way? How could he talk that way? How could he be so all over the range? And I got to tell you, if someone had told me back in the early 90s that the guy I basically threw out of the studio because it was just horrible radio, it was horrible communications, it was just deranged nonsense. If someone had told me that someday this guy will be in the cabinet as the Secretary of Health and Human Services, I would have told them that they were smoking something not very good.
Yes, or something great.
All right.
Yeah. Hey.
Or something great.
Or something great. Gorama in our chat says, one love. Love will always be greater than hate, and says, like the live stream. I love that. I actually, as a matter of fact, Gorama, send me an email to talk@ryanjesperson.com. Give us, if you're comfortable, your name and your mailing address. I have seen you here advocating for people to like and share our content enough that I am compelled on the fly to send you a token of our appreciation. Gorama, send me a note. Talk@ryanjesperson.com. Prove you are who you say you are in the live chat, and we'll send you something. Chuck, nothing but love for you, buddy. Look at this. Gosh, I knew that we'd be able to talk about what needed to be talked about and find our way out with some hope in our hearts. And of course, you delivered. It seems like without even trying, but the people that are the best at it, that's what they do. Thanks for this. We love you.
Thank you very much for everything that you do. For this audience. Thank you very much for what you do for communications. I tell all my new friends in Ottawa that the best communicator in the country, because they're always giving me kudos for, what I do and how I do it. And I always say to them, the best communicator in this country is Ryan Jesperson.
Means the world to me. We appreciate you. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you.
That
Te
is
quiero.
Te quiero.
Te quiero, Charles Adler.
Senor Adler. How do you say senator in Spanish?
No, I don't know. But I have. Can I play this? It's like 30 seconds because people
do whatever you want.
People are commenting that the lyrics to Bad Bunny are like extremely graphic and stuff like that.
Oh, get over it.
So
people want us to start adjudicating Kid Rock lyrics, really?
I know, but this is 30 seconds of the song he opened the Super Bowl with. This is a great guy on TikTok who takes Latin music and does the English version, but he sings it. So, we're not going to get dinged here by YouTube.
Okay, perfect.
He's singing himself.
They won't shut down our episode.
But this is, I hope, I'm going to murder this, but it's Titi Me Pregnuto. I don't know. This is a song Bad Bunny opened the Super Bowl with, but in English.
The English version? Hey, so my auntie asked me why I got so many girlfriends. Hey, a lot of girlfriends. Today I got one and tomorrow I got another one. But I never marry. My auntie asked me why I got so many girlfriends. Hey, a lot of girlfriends. Today I got one and tomorrow I got another one. Man, I think I want to take them all to the VIP, Hey, well, they can be my auntie and we're going to take a selfie and say cheese. They smile if they already been with me in the VIP, Hey, well, they can be my auntie and we're going to take a selfie and say cheese. They can smile the ones that forget about me. Man, I like the Gabrielas and the Patricias.
I mean, this is pretty tame if you're talking about hip hop.
He's going to introduce him to his auntie and take a selfie.
Yeah, they Colombian that text me every day. A Mexican girl that I don't even know. Going from San Antonio, still in love with me. Puerto Rican girl, just for me, you see. I got a Dominican girl, body inside. Body
so yeah, it's not graphic. I mean, this is pop music. in Latin culture. It's
Cheryl
tame.
outside is absolutely loving this right now. So is Emily G in our chat. They're loving it. Kathy too. Yeah, that's great. And I don't know, like here, the funny thing, like I'm a big fan. I get such a kick out of pearl clutchers.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like the pearl clutching that happens here, right? Like, it's like, oh, we're not going to listen to that graphic stuff from Bad Bunny. We're going to go listen to Kid Rock. What's the song about, like, talking about statutory? He's, like, basically singing about statutory rape. Like, that's his style. That's his preference. It's like, give me a break. I mean, do we really need to? We don't, like, every once in a while, you're like, we got to talk about this. And then every once in a while, you're like, if somebody's seriously hung up on this.
I tend not to. I don't even like when people, well, yes, if you're talking about rape, I mean, that's one thing. But I don't like to put any art under the microscope too much. I mean, it's fair to put art under a microscope and have an opinion, whatever. But like, I mean, people talk about country music, like Jason Aldean's song, Dirt Road Anthem. Driving down a dirt road, an ice cold beer in the console. I mean, it's clear talking about drinking and driving,
Yeah.
But like, it's art. Did he really drive with a beer in his console? Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. But it's a song. It's like when you watch a movie. Like musicians are actors. They're getting into a groove. They're getting into a different space, their art space. Like everything they sing about is not literal. It's meant to make you fall in love, to make you feel happy, sad. And yeah, sometimes it's meant to trigger you, especially today. A lot of music is meant to trigger you, just like social media. But I mean, it's art. It's subjective, and you shouldn't microscope it too closely, and especially the artists as well. I mean, you'll live long enough to see all your heroes let you down. What's that quote? But like, I mean, what we're seeing today with all the stars who are going through cancel culture and whatever it is, and a lot of them rightly so. I mean, just enjoy it. Like everyone. You know what I hate the most? And it's a tool I use to DJ, and it's a tool I use every day, and I'm glad it's around, but I hate it, is Spotify.
Yeah.
Remember we used to hear a song in the nightclub or out in public, and you'd be like, oh my God, this is amazing. You'd have to run to the DJ, or you'd have to like wait till you hear it again on the radio.
Well, and then
turn
Shazam came out, and you could Shazam songs.
I was just going to say, it's Shazam. I hate it because that veil of secrecy, of not seeing the artist, knowing their name, giving your opinion on who they are as a person was removed for a longer period of time. And you would end up loving music quicker and for longer. And then nowadays it's like, people in the chat today or people about the Super Bowl. Like, I am not going to listen to this music because it is a Latin person or because it is Bad Bunny or because of the content. You're not even going to try it? It's like Seinfeld with the apple pie episode. Have a bite. No, just shaking her head. No. You're not even going to try a bite and see if you like it?
Yeah. This is an amazing take from Ambustion, quoting someone else. He says, someone said they should translate the Epstein files to Spanish, and suddenly Republicans will give a shit, which is amazing. Amanda says, has no one read the lyrical translation of the Macarena? I haven't, to be honest, but I guarantee I'm going to right after this. By the way, I'll reference the San Francisco Chronicle on this one. The track, it's the Kid Rock track, Cool Daddy Cool. And listen, like, whatever. Kid Rock's fine. One of my best friends, Kid Rock's his favorite artist. That's fine. I don't care at all. The only thing that's funny, that's ironic, is that Turning Point USA framed its Super Bowl counter programming, like the alternative halftime show, as faith, family, and freedom. And like faith and family as the first two of those three pillars, features the headlining act, whose track Cool Daddy Cool includes the lyrics, young ladies, I like him underage. See, some say that's statutory, but I say it's mandatory.
So Kid Rock is doing a halftime show talking about this stuff. At the same time, Bad Bunny's saying, hey, beautiful women, come and take a selfie with my aunt.
Meet my auntie. Okay, so anyway, I need a gavel on this table. We are officially declaring this case closed. Dismissed. We probably wouldn't still be talking about the halftime show except for Chuck sent me that text, and I thought that it was good. Anyway, keep the conversations going, Real Talkers. We know you will. A lot of you will probably just translate this or carry this on over to our Real Talk community chat. Just a reminder, that's on Discord, and that is available, the Real Talk community chat, to absolutely everybody who supports us by way of a Patreon commitment. You can learn more at ryanjesperson.com. Just click on Connect, or you can subscribe a YouTube channel membership at the Real Deal and Real VIP levels, and you can join us. We've added, by the way, and I can show the screen here, because the whole deal with the Discord, with the Real Talk community chat is like, we don't show it. It's a private chat for our members, and they can go on there and say whatever they want. But we've added a new thread here. It's called On the Record, and so I can show these online. And this is where Real Talkers, you can submit, like if you have a flamethrower, or you want to tell a story, or you want to add something for consideration on the show, you can punch it into the On the Record chat as part of our Real Talk community chat on Discord, which is kind of cool as well. You can see Real Talkers are in there right now. And again, thank you to everybody who does support us on those platforms. By the way, I wanted to shout out a good friend of the show as well. I mentioned I was hosting the Edmonton Opera Dianne Kipnes Valentine's Gala last night. So you think of how intimidated you would be. So I wanted to, you want to do a good job up there, and that includes some kind of riffing and some stuff on the fly. And I look out, and who is sitting like 15 feet from the stage? Peter. The Prince of Puns himself, Gene Principe, is in the audience. And I'm going, oh my gosh.
So go to YouTube right now.
Go to YouTube right now. So I'm thinking, like, gosh, I got to be at the top of my game if I'm going to try to freewheel, including the odd riff or pun or play on words, if Gene Principe, who's arguably the greatest in the hockey business, greatest in sports at what he does. And so I'm there anyway, and I'm chatting with someone as the evening is winding down. This is us as the evening's winding down. And I'm sitting there, and I'm getting a coat off the hanger of the coat rack, right? Yeah. I'm getting a coat.
It fresh.
And I hear like 10 feet behind me, that signature voice I just hear, "Nice rack." Turn around. There's Gino. There's no reason for me to show this photo except to just show a little love to a guy that is, like, in my mind, the best in the business, Captain Positivity. And I've told this story before. Gene Principe has supported me personally. I remember my very first assignment. I told you this story at Rexall Place back in the day. I was out there shooting. It was when Sean Horkoff was going to the NHL All-Star game, and they had me there VJing, like shooting the camera, trying to do a report by myself. I was never particularly keen on that whole thing, just a lot. And this hand comes through, and I'm struggling. I'm trying to get a camera shot. And I have my microphone, and I'm trying to get in. And you guys know, you've seen the big sports scrums, and these are experienced shooters, and they're all in there. And I'm just this guy, nobody knows who he is. And just trying to, and I feel this hand come in. I've told you this story before, and take my mic, because I'm trying to run a camera and hold a mic. And these cameras are 40 pounds, and you get the idea, right? And this hand comes in, and it's Gene Principe, and he takes my mic and he holds it closer to Sean Horkoff for me. And I was like, I am never going to forget that. I could focus on getting the good shot. I could bring the good viz, the good tape back to the station, look like I knew what I was doing. And that was because somebody who was, in theory, competing against me in that moment did me a solid and helped me out. And I've always just loved Gene Principe for that. And it was so good to see him last night with his wife, Counselor Karen, at the Edmonton Opera Gala. Shout out to them.
Yeah, if you've ever met Gene, and obviously this story is kind of moot for me because, I obviously worked with the Oilers. But if you've ever met him, he's one of those people, when you talk to him, makes you feel like you're the center of attention.
He sure does.
He just lights you up. And then if you see him again, remembers your name, remembers the conversation, alludes to it. He's just a very thoughtful, intelligent guy who knows that, one of the things I keep saying is it's an awful quote I heard from someone else, but basically, when you die, people don't remember, how much money you had, how many podcast episodes you did, all the cool events. They only remember really how you made them feel.
Yes.
Was this person, did I get a bad vibe from them? Did they pay attention to what I was saying? Did they often brush me off? Gene's one of those guys. He just he zeroes in on you. You're
totally agree.
The light in the room when he's talking to you.
Totally agree. He actually can't get the attention off himself fast enough.
Yeah, he's one of those.
Yeah, which is great. I love this. Tracy D says the world needs more Gene Principe. Metamodern says Gene's a friggin' beauty. Yeah, he is. That's right. And by the way, just a shout out to Adler here from Joe. Joe says, if only every other white guy his age in Alberta was enlightened and caring as Charles Adler. I think that's a great compliment to Chuck. Okay, this episode is just...
Are we going to the...
Yeah, we're going to do it. We're going to do it. But before we do, hang on a second, because I do want to give a big shout out to our friends at the Royal Alexandra Hospital Foundation. Real quick, Johnny, and just make sure that everybody has Friday, February 27th circled on your calendars. Heart health is in the spotlight this month. And of course, we're supporting the C.K. Huey Heart Center at the Royal Alexandra Hospital Foundation. Heart health touches us, our parents, our partners, our kids, right? Our neighbors. You know that. And that's why the C.K. Huey Heart Center matters so much to our city and our region. And on Friday, February 27th, check out royalalex.org, and then you can link directly to Heartbeat Hideaway. This is going to be an incredible event, an intimate evening in support of life-saving cardiac care at the Royal Alexandra Hospital. It's going to go down at Atrium at Sabor, which is my favorite new restaurant downtown Edmonton, a destination where, I mean, gosh, it's like, what's the ceiling in there, Johnny? It's got to be 80 feet. I think it's even, I mean, it's just, it's great. It's wild. Maybe not 80. It's probably 40 feet. But a downtown destination where, I mean, it's a million feet. But it's just this, and it's all glass. It's all, anyway, whatever. There's a reason why it's called Atrium. So that's where this event's going to be. I love it there. It's the kind of place that really invites you to linger. You just hang out there. And this is going to be a night of great food, cocktails, connection, in support of the care and the people and the technology that's saving lives every single day. So I encourage you to circle your calendar for Friday, February 27th. You can get your tickets at royalalex.org, follow the links, or you can go directly to heartbeathideaway.ca. All right, well, we wrap every single week with a presentation. This is all courtesy of our friends at the DQs of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park, and this has become a tradition that acts as an outlet. If you understand turbocharged engines, motors, you know the need for a blow-off valve, and that's exactly what this is. It's the Flamethrower, presented by the DQs of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park. Most of these are emails, although one of them is a Spotify comment that's going to blindside Johnny for our entertainment. He doesn't know it's coming. Yeah, you don't know it's coming, guys, but this is a really good one. But first, this is from Brent in Lac St. Anne, and you're going, is this the same Brent that wrote in on February 11th talking about how he's not on the fence on separation, and then Rebecca answered him on February 12th with her comment? Yeah, same deal. So back-to-back-to-back episodes, Brent and Rebecca are sorting it out through talk@ryanjesperson.com. Brent says, Jespo, thank you for reading my email, but the response from Rebecca kind of highlights my question, right? Instead of hearing the concerns of people on the fence, Brent was wondering, where's the love for Canada, love for Alberta from the rest of Canada, right? Why are they just happy to see us leave? Why is nobody trying to convince Alberta to stay? He says Rebecca starts calling the separatists whiners and says they should be happy with what Alberta already has. Brent says this type of response is exactly why I'm torn between staying and leaving, and concerned that this response isn't isolated to that listener, Rebecca, and the hostility continues. He says, why are Albertans getting called names when another part of the country, Quebec, gets love and compassion about the way that they feel that they're getting treated? He says, my thoughts, not yours. That from Brent in Lac St. Anne. What about this one from Joe from Airdrie? Joe, congratulations, by the way. The most F-bombs per paragraph of any Flamethrower submission. I'm going to cut it by a third, but still, earmuffs, kids. He says, first, I am absolutely heartbroken about what happened in Tumbler Ridge, BC, and then the immediate hate that is descending on trans people everywhere. He says straight white kids shoot up schools, and it's like so normal that nobody even comments. But now my trans friends are yet again under attack, says Joe. And he says, and what's with the leadership in the United States for not sending condolences in this case? So many countries did. He said political leaders in UAE and Japan and Australia, European allies to Canada, and so many more. The U.S. fucking radio silence, except for whining that we built a bridge with their labor and their steel, and we're giving them half of it, even though we paid for all of it. He says, as far as I'm concerned, the day it's supposed to open, we should leave one CBSA officer, one Canadian border officer at the existing Ambassador Bridge, and move all the rest to the Gordie Howe Bridge and the tunnel, and the Orange Cheeto can explain to all those major businesses in all those swing states why there's suddenly a major stoppage of transportation on the most vital trade corridor on the continent. He says, yeah, it would hurt us too, but remember what Stephen Harper said. Let's take some pain to stick it to those American businesses and the federal government. I think that's a loose quote from Stephen Harper, by the way, but Joe from Airdrie just says, thanks, guys. I love that from Joe. Apologies for cleaning it up a little bit there, buddy. All right, here it is. So Chevy leaves a comment on our Real Talk Spotify. You can leave comments on YouTube, on Spotify, or send us an email. And this is after we talked about Gavin McKenna, the projected first overall pick in the NHL draft coming up in June, knocking a guy out, breaking his jaw because the guy called his mom an ugly name. And, well,
Chevy on Spotify?
Chevy on Spotify says, I feel sorry for any. Johnny, basically, your takeaway was that calling a guy's mom, in this case a whore, calling this guy's mom a name shouldn't result in a broken jaw. That was basically your take.
I remember.
He says, Chevy says, I feel sorry for any woman that Johnny is responsible for. If anybody ever calls his wife or his sister or his daughter or his mother a whore, bullies don't stop because you ask them to. And no comment like the one made to Gavin McKenna's mom should ever go without a broken jaw. He says, I'll bet that guy never does that
I found
again.
it. I found it.
There it is.
Chevy, there you are. There's your 50
There's
minutes
Chevy.
of fame. And I'll just say this. An eye for an eye makes the whole world blind.
Oh, Johnny, it's so responsible of you. And also, Chevy, thank you for liking and subscribing on Spotify. We appreciate you, too. How about this one from G Money, who writes into talk@ryanjesperson.com. G Money says, Alberta's got to be paying very close attention, you guys, to what's unfolding in Surrey, BC right now. Organized extortion, firearms, luxury vehicles, coordinated networks. This is not poverty-driven desperation. This is calculated, profit-driven criminal enterprise. When public discourse defaults to social explanations instead of structural enforcement, we misdiagnose the problem. Organized crime does not expand because of hardship. It expands when consequences are predictable, manageable, and insufficient. G-Money's calling for a crackdown. He says if immigration systems can be exploited by criminal networks, that is a systems vulnerability that's got to be addressed directly. And if sentencing fails to create meaningful deterrence for organized extortion, that's a government issue, not a compassion issue. Compassion belongs to victims and law-abiding residents. It should never translate into leniency for structured criminal enterprise. Deterrence is not ideological, it is functional. Surrey is not an anomaly, it is a systems stress test. And Alberta would be wise to observe Surrey carefully, because once organized crime embeds deeply, removing it becomes exponentially harder. I like that thought from G Money. And finally, this from Les, who says, I remember when I was really young, I thought about separation from Canada. I planned to leave Canada, and I was going to take Thunder Bay to Vancouver Island, and we were going to call it Western America, and we'd have 2 large ports, and we'd have all the natural resources, and I even thought of a political party we could elect to Ottawa until the separation happened, and we would call it POWs. It would be the Party of Western Separation, and who knows, like maybe California and Oregon and Washington would join, and I had a plan, and I even talked to people much older than me about it, and then the strangest thing happened, says Les. I reached puberty. Hey-o! That from Les to talk@ryanjesperson.com. That's where you can fire up your flamethrower. Proudly presented by our friends at the DQs in Palisades, Namao, Newcastle, Westmount, and Baseline Road. I took my boys there after basketball practice this week, and I recommend the chicken tendies, the best chicken tendies in the league, at the DQs of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park. Thanks, everybody, for being a part of this week's programming. Obviously, very difficult subject matter. Sometimes we laugh so we don't keep on crying. We love you guys. We mean every word of it. We're taking Family Day off. We'll see you next Tuesday with Supriya Deveti.